Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the seventh talk of the IndoPhon inaugural series. I am Shakuntala Mahanta, professor in the Humanities and Social Sciences Department at IIT Guwahati. Before introducing our speaker, I would like to begin with a brief intro to IndoPhon that we have been doing for a while now. And this is for the benefit of participants who may be joining us today for the first time. IndoPhon, what is it? We are a group of phonetics phonology enthusiasts, and one of the main motivations for the idea of IndoPhon was the awareness that there is a lack of a formal community within Indian linguistics, which focuses on speech-related research. We hope that over time we can be part of the process of building a collective of a bigger collective of phonetics phonology enthusiasts in a way that furthers research in these areas. And IndoPhon, we think that is the first step in this direction. So concurrently with IndoPhon, we have a couple of platforms that we have where we discuss the talks, which we have started those groups, and one of them is No Coda, and which is knowledge and collaborative discussion agora. That emphasizes the need for free flow of ideas, questions, data, methods, and science. No Coda, hashtag no Coda is hosted as a server on Discord, and you can follow hashtag No Coda on Twitter for discussions around the talks. And also we have a Google discussion forum to initiate conversations on all the talks hosted by IndoPhon, and we would like to request our speakers to engage with the students who are posting their questions and discussions of the talks, and a request to our speaker today also to do that. And where we try to ask and explore answers to all the new questions and the topics covered in the talks. And to join the Google discussion forum, you can write to us at indophon.india@gmail.com. And we look forward to your active participation, both hashtag No Coda and the Google discussion forum. And as you already know, we are 5 of us currently working behind the scenes. We have Professor Indranil Datta at Jadavpur University, Dr. Shomdev Kaur at IIT Ropar, Dr. Amar Malish Pope at Tejpur University, and we have Dr. Renu Punoz at IIT Palakkad. And of course, I'm here at IIT Guwahati. And the inaugural series, which began on 5th October, will end on 15th December this year. And it has been a great ride so far, and it boasts of an exciting lineup of speakers, experts working on diverse aspects of phonetics and phonology in different parts of the world. So to introduce our speaker today, Vijay D'Souza is a linguistic researcher and language activist currently based in Guwahati, Assam. After working in the field of education for over a decade, where he served as principal of St. Xavier's Jesuit schools in Arunachal Pradesh, he went on to do a DPhil PhD in linguistics at University of Oxford, which he is about to complete. His thesis explores the synchronic phonology of Hrusso Aka, a fascinatingly complex, endangered language of Arunachal Pradesh. For the past 20 years, he has been engaged in language documentation, preservation, and promotion work among the Hrusso Aka people, and with the help of a dedicated team of native speakers, has developed an orthography for the language. As Hrusso Aka is transitioning from purely oral to a written tradition, he has been involved in publishing a series of books and pedagogical materials in the language. He is currently in the process of setting up a new research and support center for the endangered languages of Northeast India. Today, Vijay will be talking to us on the topic, Steps, Contours, and the Hidden Wanderer, Tone in Hrusso Aka. Thank you, Vijay, for agreeing to be a part in the IndoPhon inaugural series, and over to you, Vijay.
Thank you very much, Shakuntala. As you said, Hrusso Aka is a very beautifully complex language, both segmentally and tonally. But actually, it's beauty lies in the underlying simplicity, um, despite the apparent complexity. I would like to share with you this whole paradox of simplicity and complexity this language has. Thanks for spending your time with me today. So let's go straight to the talk today. This is the overview of my talk. So I'll just give a brief introduction about tone languages and Hrusso Aka land, people, and the language. And then a few methodological reflections specifically aimed at students. I am aware that there are lots of students attending this and who might be interested in knowing about some of the difficulties that I've faced in terms of methodology. And then third part of this talk is tone in Hrusso Aka. I will deal mainly with lexical tone, but briefly with also grammatical tone. So what are tone languages? As we are aware, just a minute. Okay. Just give me a second. Sorry. Okay. Okay. A tone language is a language where if the pitch of the word can make difference in its meaning. This is the simplest definition. Larry Hyman defines tone languages as those languages in which indication of pitch enters the lexical realization of at least some morphemes. So there are two types of tone, that is lexical and grammatical tone. Lexical tone is where pitch is used for creating contrast between lexemes. The Chinese example here is too famous, so I will not repeat it here. And then grammatical tone is pitch is used for assigning grammatical functions such as tense, aspect, mood, gender, case, etc. The case is extremely grammatical tone for case is known to be extremely rare, and interestingly, Hrusso Aka has a case marking tonal morpheme. So Kalabari, for example, is a nice example for grammatical tone where transitive verbs can be made intransitive by this LH melody. Just coming to the context briefly, this is Northeast India for those who are not familiar with this area, this portion of the country. It is a geographically isolated and culturally unique place because there are over 200 languages. It is an ecological and linguistic hotspot of diversity, connected to rest of India by only a narrow strip of land called the Chicken's Neck. Here you can see the yellow arrow pointing to it. This is the endangered languages map of India by UNESCO, and you can see the concentration of languages in Northeast India. There are over 200 of them, and many are endangered. So tone languages in India are known to be abundant, but surprisingly limited attention has been paid to tones until recently. So there have been some comparative studies, but rare in-depth synchronic explanation of tone languages. Recently, various researchers have been exploring tonal phenomena in these languages, but there are quite few. A lot more work needs to be done. My talk is going to be a small contribution to this field. So tonal languages in Northeast India are diverse in terms of number and types of tones, types of tone in the sense of contour tones or register tones, and diversity in functional load. Some are marginally tonal languages, but there are other languages which are very, very heavily tonal, with lots of tones doing lots of things. There are also a lack of well-described methodology. A lot of studies have been done on African and the Sinospheric tones, but not so in Northeast India. Another interesting factor is presence of both lexical and grammatical tones. Grammatical tones were thought to be extremely rare in Northeast India, but we are more and more discovering, but this is not the case. They are simply not explored. Many languages seem to have grammatical tones. This is the state of Arunachal Pradesh, bordering Tibet, China, and Bhutan, and Myanmar, and on the south to Assam and Nagaland. And Arunachal has 26 major tribes, officially recognized major tribes, and over 100 minor tribes, and linguistically one of the most diverse states in India. Exact number of languages is disputed. The People's Linguistic Survey of India puts it at 90, but we really do not know, especially because of this whole language dialect confusion. This is Arunachal Pradesh, and this is the district that we are talking about today. And from that, this is the Hrusso Aka land in the West Kameng district of Arunachal Pradesh. Hrusso Akas live in 4 circles: Tijino, Buragaon, and Jamiri, and Balupong. These are some photographs of people. A brief introduction to Hrusso Aka. The language, about my own estimate is between 3,000 to 4,000 speakers out of a population of 7,000. The language is highly endangered because it's rapidly declining due to switch over to Hindi. Affiliation is another interesting problem. I have personally not actually explored this question because first, there is a need for in-depth synchronic study of the language. Without that, we are going into lots of blind alleys, and then perhaps it's a waste of time. So therefore, once the description is available, there is this interesting area to explore what exactly is the real affiliation. Whether it's a Tibeto-Burman isolate, my own sense is that the evidence points towards the Hrusso group, a small branch of Tibeto-Burman. One thing about Hrusso Aka is it is known to be very different from neighboring languages. Right back in 1909, Grierson recognized its fricative phonology, and we shall listen to some of those sounds today. It has 6 vowels, a very symmetrical vowel system, and it has 25 consonants. R is the sound R is borrowed. It is not part of the native sound system, especially the dialect that I study, the Buragaon dialect. These 3 series of complex consonants is something unique to the language, and this is what really makes the contributes to this whole feeling of having very rich and fricative phonology. I will just pronounce the retroflex series alone: pr, br, tr, dr, kr, gr, fr, vr, and mr. You can see if the sentences are full of these sounds, it can sound quite complex. So Hrusso has mostly simple concatenative morphology. There are nominal class prefixes and case mark enclitics, like many Tibeto-Burman languages. 120 verbal suffixes and 2 prefixes. As you can see, very rich in suffixes. There are tonal morphemes, and this is just an example. Seninaya fulhui itso ge jomadawa. You can see the highlighted portion, that is the verb complex. It can go on and on with many suffixes like that. Seems to be a language, I mean, it is known to be a language with strange sounds, strange for us who come here from the outside. I'd like to just give you a sample of these sounds. This is waterfall. Please note the devoiced vowel there. The vowel U is simply whispered. And here again, again a devoiced vowel. And this word again with k, ts, kring, pronounced that kring. So it's language with wicked tongue twisters, as Harrison called it. Just one sentence, which is a made-up sentence, a tongue twister. It can be read like this. The Yame clansman pierced the tiger's liver with a needle. I mean, they don't say that way, but it's simply a tongue twister. I come to the second part of this presentation. Some methodological considerations with regard to tone study. Some of the very important common practices are as follows. We would study tones in identical flanking environment, in frames, for example, or isolated utterances. We do not compare isolated utterances to a token elicited in a frame and also across the frames. Identical syllable templates and comparison within the same word classes, because word classes can affect the tone. And suspicion of what you actually hear on the surface, because contours may not be actually contours, and registered tones might have lurking companions. My title today is Hidden Wanderer. It contains that whole Hidden Wanderer. We will come to that a bit later. So these are all very common practices. I will not elaborate on these. And there is a lot of literature on this, and specifically in Northeast languages, Cope and Murray and Post have written articles. So the question is, how do we know if a language is tonal? This is not a trivial question, because even very experienced linguists have had difficulties in Northeastern tonal languages. I have given a reference there. And echoing that same incident that Mark Post describes in the article, even I did not know that also is a tonal language until very recently. If at all, I thought it is it has only one privative tone or a pitch accent language. But now I've discovered that there's more than that. There are some easy candidates in Northeast India. For example, this language, Pula. So we can easily know that this is a tonal language just by hearing its sounds. So you can see that the pitch is doing a lot of things, lots of ups and downs there. So this kind of languages are easy to recognize, but not languages like Hrusso Aka, because there is a lot of complex layers of complexity, and it's not. Hyman gives 3 stages of tonal analysis in his article. First stage is determining surface contrast. That is, we study words in isolation. Second stage is discovering tonal alternations by inserting tokens into frames and compounds, studying compounds and phrases and paradigms. And then third stage is the tonal analysis using a theoretical model and formal devices. I will be actually applying this methodology to the Hrusso Aka data, to which I will come shortly. And for the formal device I will use is auto-segmental phonology. Some practical challenges are list intonation. Anybody who studies tone has to contend with this, and declination, and environmental effects of boundaries and surrounding tones. This can become very confusing sometimes. And I think this is one of the most important things, speaker disposition. Let's dwell on these points a little bit. So list intonation, I'm sure we have heard of this. That is artificial intonation introduced when a person assumes a reading tone. So here, for example, this is actually one of my elicited tokens. Sorry, let's listen to that again.
no, no,
Now, this is, of course, a discarded token, but you can see the pitch contour is quite artificial. This is supposed to be a level tone, but in preparation for the falling at the end, at the second token, the speaker is raising the pitch, and then there is a falling tone, both of which are artificial. So this is a list intonation, and there is this a declination effect. And there's sometimes people use this best of three method for eliciting tonal data, whereas for segmental data it is all right, but not for tonal data, because these are the I usually elicit only two tokens at the most, sometimes just one. If they are well judged, I go with that. Judged as well formed, I go with the native speaker judgment. But even with the two tones, two tokens, you can see the declination effect uttered one after the other. This, if we are selecting the best out of these and then doing a statistical analysis, your data can be quite faulty. Then environmental effects, isolated versus frame elicitation. You can see here, these sound quite differently, but it is the same word.
no,
And
no,
so nu and nu, the first has a falling tone because it is affected by the right boundary tone. So therefore, it is important to elicit tonal data in words in isolation as well as multiple frames. One frame alone, you never know whether the surrounding flanking environment has changed the tone, whether there's a tone sandhi and things are affected there. Then another important thing is speaker disposition, often neglected but very important. Speakers are often camera shy, recorder shy, and that can affect the tone. Then there are speakers who have this strong prescriptivistic attitude, and hyper correcting native speakers can also give you the faulty data. Then the most important thing is elicitation induced boredom and irritation, because we ask people to repeat the tonal data again and again, and they sometimes get bored and irritated. If my consultants are listening today, they know what exactly I mean. They have been very patient, and I would like to thank you all. Then the question of instrumental analysis. Actually, I started my analysis with this, but I abandoned it because of this reason. Larry Hyman says he discourages using Pratt and Boyle surface, etc., as a means of discovering the surface contrast right in the beginning because of this. The problem with looking at the F0 properties of tones too early, then a researcher might interpret them too literally and obtain false and faulty analysis. I would like to illustrate this point. For example, here, this is a Hrusso Aka sentence, and here it goes. It is a frame. So tr is my the token I want here. There it is. Now, if you look at this pitch contour, we will conclude that it is a rising tone, or at the most rising and falling tone. Even if we grant that towards the end there is a sort of transition effect. But this is not true because this is actually a level tone which is affected by the following high tone, and it is simply rising. So therefore, this kind of approach can give us quite a faulty analysis. I will come to this when I actually deal with the Hrusso data again. So in summary, I would say speaker disposition is one of the most important factors. So therefore, reliable, patient, and energetic consultants are very important. Then list intonation. I will not dwell too much on how we negotiated all these problems, but Just briefly, list intonation. We need to train our consultants not to, have that reading tone, and it is important to distract them in a good way frequently. That I found was a very, very effective method. And ear training, instead of relying too much on technology, ear training is indispensable. Unfortunately, there's not much training available in India, especially in the Northeast. I think we must develop a good training program for ear training for anyone who would like to do tonal studies. This I've already dealt with this. So declination, I would always choose any well-formed tokens, not best of 3 or best of 2, especially if there is a statistical analysis that I want to perform. Then the instrumental analysis only at later stages. Okay, I already dealt with this. Okay, so coming to our main topic today, Hrusso Aka tone. I'll follow these conventions. High tone I'll mark with an acute accent, middle tone with the macron, and low tone with a grave accent. So goal of this section will be application, not too much theoretical application of the methods and data that I discussed up to now to the analysis of Hrusso Aka. I'm going to do a step-by-step derivation of basic Hrusso Aka tonal system using auto-segmental framework. So where do we begin? So in Hrusso Aka, it is best to begin with monosyllabic verb roots, of which there are plenty, fortunately. But although ideally root alone would be great, but it is not natural to pronounce for native speakers. Therefore, we must go with the I had to go with the citation forms, which are actually bimorphemic. I can't see my screen. Hello, Shakuntala, can you see my screen? It's okay. All right. Yeah, it's back. Sorry for that. Where are we? Okay. So citation forms which are bimorphemic, that is going to be our starting point. So let's start with the minimum triplet. Also has quite a number of minimum pairs or triplets or even quadruplets. So I will not indicate the tone here. We shall explore this further. So first is recline, ru, and second one is grind, which is pronounced ru, and third one is roll, which is pronounced ru. So these are the pitch contours in isolated utterances. So let's listen to this. Sorry.
Oh.
And second one.
Oh. Oh.
Okay. You can see that there is a pitch difference definitely here, but this is not the entire story. So tones in frames will give us quite similar data. So you can see that these highlighted parts on the right side of each frame are very similar. So are the left side highlighted parts here. And these are the tokens that we want here. And there is definitely a difference. Two tones seem to be contour tones and one seems to be level. So let's listen to them. Sorry. Okay, so just extracting the syllable with the syllable token itself, we get, again, it looks like there are two contour tones and one level tone. So let's, so the surface tonal profile looks like this: high, low, and middle, low, and low, low. This is our temporary tentative hypothesis. So Hrusso Aka has 2 contour tones and 1 level tone. This is our hypothesis for the time being. But the questions are, if there are 2 contours, what are those? Actually, are they actually high, low, or middle, low? What are those? What is the TBU? Coming back to that contour or register question, contours are only found in long nuclei or CVG syllables or VG syllables. So that hints at something. Such units are always bimorphemic. So contours are actually the African type tone clusters. That is, Hrusso Aka has no contours, basically. I will not go into all these details because there is no time, but there is a lot of evidence for this. We need to, after observing other data. So what is the TBU? There's one mora, one surface tone rule in the language. So TBU is the mora. So ru in recline, ru. There are 2 morphemes and there are 2 moras in the rhyme, and therefore each mora can get a tone, and therefore there is a contour there. So therefore we need to modify our hypothesis. From our observation, the 3 words have HL, ML, and LL profile respectively. From the 1 mora, 1 tone rule, we get the contours are due to the 2 monomoraic morphemes in each word. That is root plus the nominalizer morpheme, which was that W there. And therefore, the roots alone must have H, that is high, middle, and low tone respectively. So revising our hypothesis, we come to this conclusion. Hrusso Aka has 3 tones, high, middle, and low. So let us say H recline, and H grind, and H roll. Let us test the hypothesis now. The method I'm going to use is phonological observation. That is how these tones behave in context. So let's look for some good flanking candidates. It can be quite a difficult job to do that, but to cut the long story short, I spent a lot of time in looking for these ideal candidates, and I found these good people here. Negation marker, ma, which has a middle tone, and ablative suffix, which has a middle tone again, and the perfect marker, which has a low tone, and pretender, that is a suffix, derivative suffix on the verb root, which has a high tone. I will illustrate now only the first 3. First, we suffix the suffix phi, and this is what we find. So the high tone plus phi gives us high, middle. So there is nothing exceptional here. So high plus middle gives us high, middle. Eventually what happens is there is a boundary tone, and then we get high, low surface tone melody on the word rufi. Then when there is middle and middle tone, we get no reaction there, and we get middle. So rufi will give us rufi, and this is the melody we get, rufi could grind. But things get interesting here. So we have a low tone followed by a middle tone, and so low plus middle will give us low, low. So this is the first hint that we are getting, that about the middle tone. Middle tone will not remain middle following low tone. Why, we shall see later, but this is just observing this fact. Let us first further test our hypothesis, keeping in mind what happened in the previous examples. So here we have obtained this word rufi, or in this case it's rufi, high, low. We shall combine that with another middle toned prefix, ma, negation marker, so which means could not recline. So we get middle tone, high tone, middle tone combination, and output is also middle, high, middle. There's nothing happening there. And then middle, 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 we also get middle, middle, middle. There's nothing happening. Eventually, of course, it will be output as middle, middle, low because of the right side boundary tone. But this is before that applies. Then another interesting thing is happening here. We have middle and low and middle, but then we get high and low and low. So there is something interesting happening here. So where is this high tone coming from? Okay, let's keep this in mind and proceed to the next slide. Now instead of prefixing, we shall suffix a known low tone morpheme, that is perfect marker. So high tone plus low tone becomes middle tone plus low tone. So what happens to the high tone here? So H plus L gives ML. So again, middle tone plus low tone gives us high tone and low tone. So high, low seems to be quite strange. Then low and low will give us low and low. So there's nothing happening there. So observations are deletion of high tone in 4 here, and acquisition of high tone in 5 here, in 5. Okay. So how to make sense of this data? One thing to notice here is low tone is acting quite strangely, and we can't say it is dissimulation of tone, because if it is dissimulation, when there is a high-low combination, high-low should remain as it is because there is already tonal difference there. But high tone gets deleted, which means there is something that we have not observed, and that I would say is the floating tone high, which is actually exist underlyingly with the low tone. So let's see how it works. So here the high tone on R and low tone is actually there is a hidden floating tone there, and when these two morphemes combine, high and high come together and they both get deleted. I will come to that rule later on, but just to observe that when there is a high and high competing for the same docking site, both of them get deleted, and therefore we get the tone deletion there, and we get a middle tone output, and we get ML, middle L, and this is pronounced as Rida. From R and Da, we get Rida. Next. So there is a middle tone here, and there is a high tone, and high tone will spread, and middle tone just disappears, and we get high-low output. We get Rida. So middle plus low, we get high-low. And then when there is low-low, there is a rule in the language that the high tone can displace the previous low tone only if this first H finds a docking site. If there is no docking site, there is no interaction at all. Both will remain as they are, and the low tone is output here. Perhaps this H tone gets deleted. So L plus L will give us LL output. So some interim observations here now. So just to summarize, a middle tone syllable preceding an L tone gets a high tone, and an H syllable preceding low tone loses a high tone and becomes middle tone. This is not dissimulation because if it is dissimulation, this HL should not be affected by H tone should not be affected by the following low tone, but that is what is happening here. Therefore, the floating H tone with the low tone. The middle tone actually is phonologically inactive. There are lots of examples which it gets easily swayed this or that. If there is a low tone following it, it just is there is a downstepping, or it simply becomes low. Or if there's a high tone following or before it is raised, it doesn't do anything phonologically. It cannot be deleted. It cannot be acquired anywhere in the morphemes or in the during the tonal interaction. So this is our final hypothesis. Hrusso Aka has two underlying tones. One is high and the other is high-low. High in HL is actually a floating tone. M tone, the middle tone, is a default tone. It is phonologically inactive. Just a summary of rules that I have mentioned during my talk so far. So the tonal interaction is right to left. The spreading is right to left. HH sequence is prohibited. And when there is this kind of a sequence, the first H is deleted. And if high compete for the same docking site, both are deleted. No low interaction unless the first floating tone finds a docking site, then there is interaction in longer words. Again, M is inactive and easily swayed. So this is the summary of tonal interaction in bisyllabic words. So high plus low will give us middle plus low because of high deletion. I'm going top to bottom. High plus middle will give us high plus middle. There is no change. And high plus high will give us middle and high because the first H gets deleted because of the rule that I mentioned just now. Middle and low will give us high low because the floating tone from low tone is spreading to high. Then middle and middle, there is absolutely no tonal interaction whatsoever because there is no tone at all. And middle high will give us middle high. Again, there is no tonal interaction here. Sometimes the middle M tone is upstepped. As I said, it is easily swayed by the surrounding tones. This gets upstepped. And low, unless there is a docking site, it will give low output. And low plus middle will give us low and low because a middle tone, because of natural declination effect in a sentence or even a word, middle tone cannot rise. It can only come down after an L tone. And low plus H will give us low and H sequence, LH sequence. Okay, so this is a summary of tonal interactions in, as I said right in the beginning, Hrusso Aka is a fabulously complex language, but these are all the rules we need to obtain all sorts of complexity further. I will not go, for the lack of time, I will not go into bigger words, but any Hrusso Aka word can be derived using these simple rules and these tonal interactions. Let's come to grammatical tone. I would like to discuss with you today only two of them. Just an illustration of the first grammatical tone by Hrusso Aka marks accusative case by a high tone. And this is a tone without any segmental content, but it simply docks onto anything that is available at the proper site. We will see what I mean here in our screen here. So there is a sentence here. First, I will play the video and then we shall discuss the example.
Jelu I shansa I griwa. I griwa. I griwa. I griwa. I griwa. Shansa I jelu griwa. Semane I griwa. I griwa.
So you can see the accusative tone is marked by, an accusative case is marked by a high tone on the pronoun E. So in this sentence, E giva, that's what she's saying, who is beating whom. The one who gets beaten is marked with the high tone. So this is I said this is the morpheme without segmental content, and here is the evidence for that. So we can say Shansa E Jelu Geva, that is Shansa E. Since Shansa is marked, he is getting beaten here. But this tone can be on the final syllable of Shansa as well. So the sentence will be Shansa Jalugiva, Shansa Jalugiva. So the accusative case marking tone can just go into the onto the last syllable of this word. The second grammatical tone is an very interesting interaction between the lexical tone and grammatical tone. I had always thought that Hrusso can just have bare verbs in root forms without any affixation whatsoever to mark the past. But that proved to be false because there is something happening here. So I use this frame, he, ana, and verb. So he or she, verb, and past like this. I'll illustrate that, but actually, actual example. So we have these three tones with three tokens: high, middle, and low, and these are the three different words that I've used in this presentation. These are the three morphemes. See, iana is the high tone morpheme, which means recline or lay. She grinded like this, and she rolled like this. This is what we expect, but this is not what we get. What we expect is high tone, but we get low tone. When we expect a middle tone, we get a high tone, and when we expect a low tone, we get a low tone. So what is actually happening here? So these are the sentences. So when we expect I anag, we get I anag, and when we expect I anag, we get I anag, and when we expect I anag, we get exactly the same thing, I anag. Okay. So let's make sense of this data. So this is the sentence with the test word here has a high tone. So there is actually a floating tone which marks the past, and that is what is deleting that H tone in the first instance. So this comes and interacts with the high tone. Both of them compete for the same docking site, and they both get deleted, and we get a middle tone. And eventually, because there's a middle tone and there's a boundary there, we get a low tone. Secondly, this is she grinded like this. I anag, sorry, I anag. So that is middle tone, and there's a floating tone there, and the there is a docking side which is free, and therefore we get a high tone. I anag, and because of the bounded tone, high tone is slightly a downstep, or you can even have a high low contour there. And thirdly, when there is a low tone, there is no docking side um, to the left, because the word boundary cannot be crossed, and this tone is doesn't affect any change there, and we get the same low tone here, yanagu. So this is just meant to be an illustration of grammatical tone. There are more grammatical tones which I will not illustrate here. So just to conclude my presentation today, Larry Hyman mentions lethargic versus restless tone systems as a possible typology of tonal languages. Lethargic tone systems are those where there may be lots of tones, but tones do not do anything. If a tone is associated with a syllable, it will always remain with that syllable. Restless tone systems are those where tones are all over the place. They get deleted, they can knock off other tones, and they can have lots of tone sandhis. So these are restless tone systems. Hrusso Aka is actually a restless tone system. So there is grammatical tone, there is stress tone interaction, which I will not go into today, which add to further to the complexity. However, as I illustrated, beneath all this complexity, there are only two tones. That is the power of simplicity of this language. So for further research, building the tonal interactions, that is a downstep, upstep, and neutralization need further study. And compounding, building of multisyllable syllabic words need further exploration. Tone stress interaction is very complex. Again, I'm sure there is a very simple explanation for these, but on the surface they look very, very complex. And there are more grammatical tones, and therefore further lexical tone and grammatical tone interactions need to be studied. So these are some of the references. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you very much, Vijay, for this very insightful talk. We have learned a lot. And now I would like to put the questions for you. From the beginning, we have a lot of questions. So first, this question. Um,
Yeah, very important question, I suppose. There are there are methodologies for ear training for tone. William Smalley's Articulatory Phonetics, the textbook, gives a lot of listening material which is found on the internet. I basically learned from there. So various types of tones, level and contour tones. Initially, I found it quite difficult to recognize also tones, but it comes by practice. Once there is basic training, then you will learn by experience. Yeah, this is simply oft used terminology to apply to tonal systems where there are more register tones, and there is a lot of there is grammatical tones, etc. So this kind of, it's a typological term. Uh, so there is supposed to be African type, and there is supposed to be Sinospheric type or Chinese type, where there are a lot of contour tones. So actually, it is simply a it is a terminological question. Whether it is fully justified, I think it is not justified, because there are lots of other areas where African type of tones are found. So I was just using this term. Um,
Also, discussions have been around those terms. Probably even in Moira, Yip spoke on tone, so you have those divisions
yeah, yeah,
based on
that's yeah, yeah. Some people
geographical.
simply say contour tones and register tones. So registers tones being, more like African tones, and contour tones like Chinese tones. Um, so register tone system is a system where predominantly the tones are level, and contour tone system is that where predominantly you find contours. Um, Yes, I guess the disk preference for HH sequence is definitely OCP. So the first H has to be deleted. So the language doesn't allow that. And it does not apply to surface MM because there is no tone there. It's simply when there's no tone active, the language simply defaults to a melody that is the middle tone. Um, Later on, stress rules might come in, but at the lexical tonal level, it simply doesn't apply here. Uh, so, yeah, that's how the Hrusso Aka system works. Um, yes, if you mean, are there any other floating edge tone types? Yes, grammatical tones are mostly floating in this language, as I said. But lexically, the floating tone is found only in associate along with the low tone. So low tone actually is underlyingly floating tone and low. That's the only lexical at the lexical level.
Okay, so
Um, Appropriate terminology for acoustic. I think I do not know what exactly you mean here, Satish. Uh, if you could enlighten me, uh, if you would clarify this question.
okay, so maybe you will get a clarification.
Yeah, yeah.
So before, I think I will skip my question and I will ask. I'll put the other questions before you first.
Okay. Um, yeah, so the floating tones cannot be observed directly, obviously. Um, so as I gave those examples, the evidence comes from what the floating tone is doing to the surrounding, um, uh, tonal environment. For example, if there is a middle tone is actually it's not a tone, it is a default, because there is that is the most occurring tone in the language. And we can have a series of middle tones, and there's a lot of evidence in the language, which I will not go into right now, that middle tone is phonologically inactive. Now, if that tone acquires a syllable with middle melody, tonal melody, acquires high tone, and only before an L tone. That evidence points to that the existence of a floating tone there. Then again, coming to H and L sequences. Now, why should H tone get affected? Because it is perfectly well formed. If you see OTP, HL sequence is very well accepted in if there are only singleton tones without any underlying complexity. Now, the very fact that high tone gets deleted in the presence of a low tone, that makes you very suspicious that there is something hidden here. A hidden wanderer is there, and he is trying to go and fight with that high tone. And then what happens is both of them get deleted. So these facts strongly point to the existence of floating tone. And again, this evidence is strengthened again and again by longer words, for example, which I have not given those examples today, but there is further evidence that strengthens this claim.
So there are some methodological questions which I will put to you first.
Sure.
This is, so this is one question about reading intonation. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. So one thing I found quite useful was to sort of frequently keep discussing with the consultant, and in a good way to distract the consultant, so that I would elicit just a couple of tokens first, and then just talk to the consultant, and then again a couple of tokens, then go on like that. Do not go for a long list at once. Then that is quite helpful. Another one is break the native speaker chunk with Hindi or some other language. So use a bilingual mode of elicitation, and that kind of list intonation is often broken. So I found this distracting the native speaker and then using two languages was quite useful.
Okay. So another question from Sharmistha.
Which option among frame sentence and normal sentence is better in your opinion to elicit tone data? Well, this question about frame is language specific. Usually I say dash is used, and it's quite a useful frame, but it is dangerous to elicit the data with just one frame. So I use, for example, 14 frames, and I discovered a lot of things that I said today by using multiple frames. Just with one frame, I wouldn't have discovered what I did. So therefore, it's better to rely on multiple environments and multiple frames. Yeah, I think the second second part on the does it mean data on a specific word? Is it words in isolation? If that is what you meant, Sharmistha, I think words in isolation are also important because they give you a stable boundary tone environment, and they give you a citation form of pronunciation. But there also the disadvantage is they are very highly prone to list intonation.
Okay, and also I think the problem with eliciting a specific word is that tones will always influence each other. If it's a language like what you said, tones are moving. So if you have, even if the the environment has to be very very specific, probably make sure that you have mostly M tones which are neutral or something.
Yeah.
So I think sorry. I had a question about, is it are these tones, can you call these tones sandhi instead of tone alternation? So how would you make a methodological distinction between tone sandhi and alternations of these types? And
yes, sorry, there is an echo. Yes, I would use that. Although I didn't use the term in my presentation today. Thanks for bringing that up. I would use this, especially what is happening between um, high tone and low tone. I would call that is a typical case of tone sandhi there. Uh, Whether we should call M tone interaction with any other tone tone sandhi, I'm not
Yeah.
sure of that because there is no tone at all there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this
But
I think. Yeah,
that one looks like a Sandhi effect there, yes.
yeah,
So that's why I was asking. Maybe you can then, when you are elaborating your analysis, so maybe you can also uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
work
Thanks.
that out, because yeah, that would make it a very nice comparison between the tones, the different tones. So also I have yeah, another question here about tonal interaction.
Yes. Yeah, LM gives LL because there are two steps there. The first step is LM, in fact. Um, then what happens is the now underlyingly there is L and then there's M. There is no tone at all, and what happens is the when you utter a word or a sentence, there is natural declination effect, and therefore unless there is a question or any intonational effect, syllable cannot be higher, especially if there is no tone, specific tone, high tone or something. The syllable cannot go higher than the previous one, and therefore it has to be L. And then boundary tone effect also comes into play, and therefore it is output specifically as L. Uh, the main reason is M is not a tone at all, so it has to just follow the natural flow of the of the speech. So therefore following an L, it will naturally become an L.
So yeah, another question about the prefixes.
Only I think I mentioned. Oh yeah. So one is the negation marker. The other one is on. I think you are mentioning the prefixes on verbs. One is the negation marker, and the other one is prohibitive. These are the two prefixes that Hrusso Aka has.
Okay, and then boundary, effect of boundaries. So I guess you cannot avoid.
Yeah, if you are actually putting the test word towards the edge, you cannot avoid boundary effect. One needs to be aware of the boundary effect and work with that. But if the token is somewhere in the middle of the sentence, you can avoid those intonational boundary effects, but still you cannot avoid the boundary effects within the frame.
Okay.
For example, there is a word boundary or a phrase boundary. Those things are all. So the actually boundary effect in natural speech cannot be avoided. One needs to work around that, I guess.
So this is a question from Paroma.
Um, Observation from your presentation.
So did she mean co-occurrence restriction? Probably.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, there's no other restriction actually. Uh, Yeah, we can get a series of low tones because unless there is a docking side, there is no interaction, and we can have a series of M tones. It's only when there are the two H tones come together there is a restriction, and the first H gets deleted. Um, does that answer the question? Yeah.
So I think she's asking if does this happen across the board, if there are or exceptions to these tone
I
patterns?
have not found any exception. I mean, those that I found to be exception, there's always an explanation when the other things like stress and intonation come in.
So are there other intonational effects? I think is that
Yeah,
probably that's what.
well, intonational effects are there. I did not deal with them because it is still an unexplored area, but I'll just broadly explain what happens. So, stress docks on mainly to the high tone syllables, and then that again creates intonational patterns. Um, so the intonation has to um, work around what is work on what is fed to it by the stress system. Um, so there is some effect, uh, but I will not go into that right now.
So some more questions from Professor Hemlata Nagarajan about focus and the types of sentences.
Um, no, actually, it is. I mean, I just gave two sentences there, but there is a question whether this is an accusative case or what Randy Lapolla calls the anti-ergative case, where the patient, the most patient-like entity in a sentence is marked with a high tone like that. So it's definitely not a focus marker there. At best, it can be called an anti-ergative case. I prefer to call it as accusative.
And also another one.
It was two E's, yeah. We can just. Yes, there were two E's, but then those E's can move anywhere. Actually, they it's part of the noun phrase, and when the noun phrase word order can change, but that tone does not change at all. So the patient-like entity in the sentence will always be marked there with a high tone.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think there are some questions about the word order changing. I think again Dr. Upor has asked, but I think that is a conversation with Professor Hemlata. And then we have a lot of appreciation for your talk, and starting with Indranil, and so Pahi, um, and she would like to hear more about grammatical tones from you. And okay, so we need to look at more data. Hemlata
Yeah.
says, and also and Paroma says, I meant aside from the floating H tone analysis, co-occurrence restriction on embedded.
Aside from the 48, um, okay. I mean, I have not noticed any co-occurrence restriction between on M and L tone because my analysis, according to my analysis, says M can occur with any tone, and there is no restriction. It is simply since there is no underlying tone there, it gets swayed and it can go high or low, but there's no restriction on M tone with any other tone. So that is my analysis. And why an L becomes no M becomes L after an L, there is a there is an explanation, there is a natural explanation in terms of the boundary phenomena, and therefore I do not consider that as a restriction there. So
Okay, so
yeah.
she thanks you for the clarification, and yeah, so and also more appreciation for your talk. And so we have now, this brings us to the end of the questions. Thank you once again, Vijay, for the wonderful talk, and our audience for your engaging questions. And before we end, we would like to present a small token of our appreciation to Vijay. So, um, and let me um, let me do this again. Mm, So, oh, uh, yeah.
I
So
saw a glimpse of it.
just give me a second. Um, just a second. And
Wow.
yeah. So, can you see it? Yeah, you can see
Yes,
it.
this is amazing.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah. So this is these portraits are by Miss Koil Biswas, and she recently earned her master's degree in linguistics and language technology from Tejpur University, and she's from Tangla in Assam, and she has interest in uh, traditional and digital painting and sketching. Thank you so much, Koil. And we would also like to
It's
thank all
amazing.
our participants. Um, Glad you like it, Vijay. We'd like to thank all our audience participants. Thank you for your questions. Very insightful talk again, Vijay, and thank you for sharing your data and all the interesting findings about Hrusso Aka and completely endangered, uncharted territory there. And we need to work more on these languages. And also for the audience, please note that our next talk is on 1st of December by Ada Khattab from Newcastle University. You can visit our website for more details. Thank you all once again. That's all from us today, and take care and bye. Yes, so thank you.
Thank you very much.